Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast powered by Closers.io, where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Amar Elm, and in each episode, we uncover the stories behind impactful ventures, the challenges faced along the way, and the strategies driving their future growth. Today, we are absolutely thrilled to have Mitchell Levy, the visionary behind Credibility Nation, a platform dedicated to helping professionals and organizations establish and enhance their credibility in the marketplace. With a career spanning over 35 years in Silicon Valley, Mitchell has founded 20 businesses, authored over 60 books, and delivered two TEDx talks. His mission is clear: to empower individuals and companies to be seen as credible and trustworthy in their respective fields. Mitchell, welcome to Founders Future.
Mark, great to be here.
I'm excited to dive in. I always like to take things back. And I know for you, you have a very extensive career. You have a lot of experience. But I guess take us back to before you started your career. What made you want to step into this space? What made you decide to embark on the mission that you're currently on?
Oh, those are two different questions. So let me answer the first one. When did I start to be an entrepreneur? We'll do that one. So the last time I actually worked for a corporation, I was running the e-commerce component of Sun Microsystems supply chain. And that was in 1997. For those that remember, that was the dot-com days, the dot-com boom. And I have a business. I've been in Silicon Valley for 38 years, and it was too powerful of a time not to be an entrepreneur. And so that's when I opened up the door and said, "Hey, listen, I've got to do my own thing." Since then, I've started 20-ish companies. But it's been 1997 when I said, "Yep, I'm hanging up the shingle and I don't want to work for a larger corporation," although I guess technically some of my executive coaching ends up being for larger corporations, but it's different coming in from that outside perspective than actually being inside the company.
I love that. And then what was the motivation for you to start your focus today and maybe give the listeners an understanding of what you're currently focused on? Because I'm sure you're not running 20 businesses right now.
I have two really that I focus on, and I'll say what they are, then I'll go backwards. So
Cool.
one is executive coaching. I'm part of the Marshall Goldsmiths. He's one of the top 100 coaches on the planet. I'm part of what he calls the 100 coaches. So I'm part of that. And so typically it's fast growing CEOs. So Inc. 5000 CEOs leading the future with executive abundance.
Mm,
And the other business is much more tactical. And that one is for business leaders tired of slimy LinkedIn sales tactics. So
okay.
how did I get to both? The Some of the businesses I was running started in 2005 and ran to about COVID was book publishing. We had published over 750 books. I've written 65 myself.
Mm,
And what's interesting about publishing or any vertical is when you're in a vertical and there's lots of demand, that's wonderful. When you get to the point where it becomes a commodity, book publishing is now, in my mind, a commodity. What ends up happening is a new business model enters the fold. It's not impossible to compete against, but it's really difficult.
mm.
That business model is called stupid. So it's every, and I'm putting in the double quotes, every publisher who will publish today at a loss, hoping to make it up tomorrow in volume, hard to
Yeah.
compete. So we still have that business and it still runs for people to come to us. But
Okay.
I started seeing that happen in 2019. I spent a year going on a Napoleon Hill journey. And I interviewed 500 thought leaders on what that concept of credibility is and the evolution of that. So I understood credibility and clarity, and that evolution of that brought me to where I am today. Happy to share more if you want.
Yeah, no, that's powerful. I love that. So you've got the two sides to that. You've got the executive coaching and then the business leaders looking to grow their LinkedIn set in a nicer way.
Yeah, I decided to do the pain point versus the pleasure point.
Mm,
The pleasure point on executive coaching is essentially Inc. 5000 CEOs leading the future with executive abundance. And the question there is, what is executive abundance? And then I could talk about what that means.
yeah.
On the LinkedIn side, I went for something that makes people smile, and thank you for smiling, because you can't be on LinkedIn today without getting slimed. You're
Mm,
getting slimed by somebody who the first time they meet you, they want to sell you something.
yeah.
And so the concept that I'm using, I ended up buying a LinkedIn agency.
Okay.
And what we're doing is we're bringing back the good old concept of social selling, the good
Mm,
old concept of building relationships with referral partners, continuing relationships with existing clients, and building relationships with prospects. And it's pretty easy. The reason I ended up doing this is as a book publisher, back before LinkedIn was making money, I was sitting in the offices with two of the co-founders, Reid Hoffman, Konstantin Gerlich, and they paid me to write and publish LinkedIn's first book. Since then, I've looked at over 200,000 LinkedIn profiles, and what I believe I've identified is the 5% of LinkedIn functionality that delivers 80% of the value. And so it's all around delivering value to clients. And the biggest pivot I had, I've had many pivots in life, but one of the biggest pivots was about 5 months ago.
okay. Can you expand a little bit on that in terms of what's the 5% that drives the majority of the value?
So the 5% that drives 80% of the value is about building relationships. And if what is the best way to build relationships? Well, it's not to do post and scream from the rooftop, buy my stuff. It's not about direct messaging, buy my stuff. The best place to build relationships is in LinkedIn Messenger.
Mm,
So what do you do in LinkedIn Messenger? One of the most obvious things that people are absolutely looking forward to is celebration of life events. Happy birthday, happy anniversary, congrats on your new job.
yeah.
Now, here's the interesting part. Amara, if we were talking and I wished you a happy birthday and you said thank you, and then I looked at your profile and I said, wait a second, Amar's a great referral partner for me. I want to actually have a conversation or I want to be on his podcast. Even if you just said thank you, I'm not going to let it stop there.
Yeah.
So I may do something like, hey, Amar, what'd you do? Anything interesting for your birthday? If I want to build the conversation. Or I might say, Amar, you know what? Wishing you a happy birthday allowed me to look at your LinkedIn profile. And you know what? I'd love to have a conversation. You open to a Zoom call. That is what social selling is. It's not about selling. It's
Yeah.
about putting yourself in front of somebody so you can have a Zoom call so you can decide if you like each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And see if it's a fit in some way, shape, or form. I like that. So, how do you actually work with business leaders in that company? So, let's say I am a founder listening to this and I'm like, okay, this is actually very interesting. I want to expand my LinkedIn presence. I want to be able to get very good at this. What does a typical client engagement with you look like?
So we have a solution. It's called Social Complement. You can get there, socialcomplement.com. And what happens first, number one, is I need to know your clarity. I need to understand in less than 10 words. Amara, how many times have you asked somebody, who are you and what do you do? And 10 minutes later, they're still trying to explain all the people they serve and all the things they do. I have now helped, and this is what came out of the research. I've now helped over 1,000 companies and individuals articulate in less than 10 words
Mm,
where they're executing on their purpose. So for me and for the person I'm working with, that's their compass. Once you have a compass, then it becomes very easy. LinkedIn is a couple different things. I just did a paper on the 7 habits of highly effective LinkedIn networking, and what does social selling for LinkedIn really mean? And the first thing is once I know the compass, then I could look at your LinkedIn profile and go, okay, that profile represents your compass. Now, if you're the CEO of a company and you've got 20 people or 100 people or 10,000 people, what do their LinkedIn profiles look like? And by the way, if you're sitting there and you've got 500,000 employees and there's not somebody inside your firm that's helping your employees be a good advocate for you, you're missing an amazing opportunity. So first thing is, what does your profile look like? Once they have a good profile, The next question is, are you nurturing relationships with people you're already connected to? The
Got it.
easy thing is life events.
Yeah.
But if there's a target audience that are referral partners or prospects, are you sending them messages with good, compelling content? So next, after that is, are you sending good, compelling content?
Yeah.
And then the last thing is, are you reaching out to people who are second or third level connections that could be or should be connected to you?
Got it.
The thing that I recommend that potentially flies in the face of what many other people say is I actually recommend that you do one post a week. Now, I've heard people say, hey, you should be posting 10, 20 times a day so people see you. What I could tell you, that sounds great. Here's the and. Even my friends who have 1.5 million followers on LinkedIn, they will tell you one thing. Even if they get large amount of engagement from their posts, they will tell you that they've never picked up a client directly from the post.
Mm.
So you
Yeah.
want to post once a week. And what you want to do are the types of things that allow you to have a conversation inside of LinkedIn Messenger. And
Yeah.
that is celebrating life events, reaching out to people you want to talk to, and also reaching out to people who are second or third level connections that should be first. And then they get put in the rest, all the other sequence.
I appreciate you breaking that down. So in like the nuts and bolts, are you working with me one-on-one to develop that? And is it like we do weekly calls or something like that? Or is it just one call, we set all this stuff up, and then I just go off on my own and get it done? What does that typically look like?
No, it's a great question. So I'm going to break it up in a different way. If you happen to be a do-it-yourself type person, I'm going to gift you all the tools you need to do it successfully, and I'm not going to sell that to you, right? You become a referral partner.
Okay.
If you were somebody who wants it done for you, I could recommend a service. They charge a whole lot more money than we charge. Okay. I'm in that, and typically I find the do-it-yourselfers and the done for you are about 10% each. I'm in the 80% in the middle. I'm in the done with you. So
Okay.
I have a group program we run once a month where everyone who comes to the room gets their clarity statement.
Got it.
Then what happens is there's a bunch of meetings. It's all sort of group in order to be able to afford to do this. It's all mostly group meetings. And every now and then I'm looking at somebody who's a client and I go, yeah, we need to talk. Let's do a one-on-one. Everyone has access to my calendar. But the point is, once it gets rolling, Amar, can I give you a good example? Would you mind?
Please, I would love that.
So there's a client of mine who is 70 years old. He's a CFO and he comes to me and says, Mitchell, I got to keep working for as long as I could possibly work because I love doing this. Great. We came up, I'm going to say my clarity statement, I call it a CPOP, your customer point of possibilities. When you asked me who I was, I shared both my CPOPs, customer point of possibilities. So about 3 months ago, we came up with a CPOP for him. He started doing some work. He started talking to people. And about a month ago, he comes to me and we're in a public meeting. He goes, Mitchell, can I change my CPOP? Now, just to be clear, it's your CPOP, not mine. So the answer is, of course, because it's your customer point of possibilities is who you are. It's when you wake up in the morning, what do you get excited about? It is to some extent the vibrational energy that your body vibrates at.
Yeah.
When you're in alignment doing what you love, it's not work anymore, it's play. So he comes to me and says, Mitchell, can I change my CPOP? Yeah, of course. He goes, let me tell you what it was. Now, the CPOP is a formula, and he came up with the right formula. What he said sounded really good. And then he says, how come you're not excited about this? How come you're not jumping up and down? And I go, could you possibly tell me why you changed? And he says, over the last 2 months, you've given me the opportunity to talk to a bunch of people. And I was reminded on the CFO duties I was doing what I didn't like doing. And I was
Yeah.
reminded what I love doing. So I changed my CPOP to focus on what I love doing. Now, after he said that, I was able to say, hey, I love what you're doing.
Yeah.
So that was public. And
Yeah.
then when we did a quick one-on-one, I go, I don't think we're quite there yet. What happens is it's hard for people to articulate who they are and how they show up unless it is not easy for people to do this for themselves.
Yeah.
98% of people don't have clarity. And so when I listen to you and I can gift you that concept of a CPOP, it's hard to hold on to it because we're just not been taught. And so when I talked to him privately, I said, I don't think we're quite there yet, but we're pretty good for now. Let's adjust your program. Let's
Hmm.
adjust your outreach and what you're doing. And my guess is 2 months from now, you're going to give me an updated one.
Yeah.
And that's so the working is if you don't need that, if you know exactly your CPOP and it actually works, it's set. And then every now and then, at least once a quarter, we'll monitor where you're doing. But otherwise, if you need a little bit more extra help, we'll give you a little bit more. And if you really get stuck and you need more help, there's probably outside resources that I could bring in to support you.
Cool. I appreciate you breaking that down. And it's cool that you have the three. So you've got to do it yourself, done for you, done with you. Now, how do you actually, let's shift to the back end. How do you actually generate leads for your company? So in terms of if you want to bring more people into the group program, if you want to bring more executive coaching clients on, what does the lead generation process look like?
You know, what's interesting is I'm using the same service that I use for others.
Okay.
So I've been using that for 8 years.
And
And it's just, it looks differently when you apply it to other people than when you apply it to yourself. You learn a lot. In the first 5 months, I've picked up 17 clients, and I've learned a lot by looking at what I've been doing through the eyes of somebody else to help to support what they're doing. Now, what also works is public speaking. So I occasionally do public speaking. Just recently introduced the concept of executive abundance at a conference. But I also do a bunch of podcasts. So I run a podcast myself, as well as I have somebody who books me on other people's podcasts. So this is one of five this week, podcasts that I'll be on. I don't think I'm running anyone today. So the next time I'm interviewing somebody else is next week.
got it. And you mentioned you've been using a service for 8 years. Is that like a lead gen agency?
It's a LinkedIn service that helps support the LinkedIn. There's a lot of things on LinkedIn which is a valuable to it. It's things that you can do that just take time. So the repetitive stuff that takes time are things that you want somebody else to do. So
Mhm.
having a VA, the
Yeah.
some people don't do their calendar. I use Calendly as my VA for my calendar.
Yeah. So it's essentially they do the outreach for you, the connection requests, they go on Sales Nav and do all that sort of stuff. What about, sorry, go for it.
Oh, I was going to say yes, and I'm not sure this is right. I want the client to go on Sales Nav. Now, sometimes they need help, right? Because and once again, if I'm thinking about a closers.io approach, maybe that's not the right way to do it. And I'm 5 months into this newer service. So I might actually change that. The thing is, if I'm doing that, we may need to charge more, right?
Yeah, fair enough.
And so it's a fine line there between making things. My executive coaching is 10x, 20x what I charge for this service. And
Got
so
it.
it's a different way to talk to a different audience,
Yeah,
but they both do the same thing.
yeah.
So let me tell you the same thing. I learned something really powerful 5 months ago. I
Okay.
learned that even being an expert at credibility and being one of the top clarity people on the planet, I could sit with any company, any human, and help them articulate their CPOP in less than 10 words. That's not what people want. That's what
Mm,
they need, but that's not what they want. So what do they want? Like you, they want to close more business, or they want, for my two businesses, they want to be a leader that delivers executive abundance.
hmm.
They want to be able to use LinkedIn effectively in a non-slimy way.
Yep.
Or in your case, they want to be able to close more business. So what are the tools that coaches need to do to put in place to close more business? That's what they want.
Hmm.
Now, behind the scenes, I'm delivering what they need, clarity and credibility.
Interesting. For the executive coaching, is there a different process that you go through when it comes to generating your leads for your clients?
Oh, what I'll say is I could always use help because we always could use help on lead stuff. For most coaches, I'm not an exception. Referrals are a great source.
Okay.
But I'm also very active at using LinkedIn and outreach. So
Mm,
the LinkedIn is both this picking up new second and third level connections that become first, and then just building a relationship with them over time, as well as doing podcasts. So inviting people onto my podcast and or being on other people's podcasts.
got it. What have you found to be the most effective form of lead gen for you?
LinkedIn's still the most effective.
Yeah, fair enough. And I guess it's a combination because I'm assuming you publish your podcast on LinkedIn as well, or at least like post, hey, a new episode has come out kind of thing.
Oh, yes. And typically, when I do for my podcast, I actually do LinkedIn Live. It makes it a little
Cool.
bit exciting and maybe we get a little bit nervous. But then I post it later on, and I'm using Substack, post it later on Substack, and then Substack distribute it to the other podcasts, Apple, and so on.
Nice. Now, this is my favorite topic, which is the sales process. For help us understand, and maybe we can segment them into the executive coaching and then the social complement. Is that what you want me to call it? Socialcomplement.com?
That, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. What does that look like in terms of once a lead comes in, what are the steps they go through for them to become a sale?
Executive coaching, it's all about the conversation. It is when a lead comes in, what we need to do is get them on a call with Mitchell. Typically, it's a 45-minute calendar call, and we need to explore. During the conversation, the what we get to explore is clarity, who they are today and where they're going.
Yep.
And it's very clear to understand at that stage whether there's a good fit or not.
Mm,
One of the things that any coach needs to be good at, I also happen to be particularly good at it, is creating a container of trust. Because if you can't do that, you can't possibly win.
yeah.
So some of the best places for me are CEOs who something's going to change in 3 to 4 years. By the way, that's everybody, but they've actually recognized that something's changing.
Yeah.
They either want to sell their company or they just sold the company and they realize they don't know what to do with their lives, or they're a little bit later and then coming back in, or somebody that is really, I just realized is amazing are people who they don't have formal education in running a business, which, by the way, with today's tools, you definitely don't need formal education in running a business. All you have to do is know how to solve a demand.
Yes.
You solve a demand and you put it, and you could go to AI and build any product or platform you want. So they don't have formal education. And this is what I'm really good at helping people avoid. They've already spent a lot of money on, I don't want to say slimy, but they spent a lot of money with fake experts
Mm,
trying to sell them a formula.
yep.
And that's probably what I really want to get across is most people have a formula to success. Here's the formula I use with Tony Robbins and it'll work for you. Now, formulas work in science. E equals MC squared is a universal formula. In business, they don't work. So the CPOP is a formula. In and of itself, it's not valuable. Only 10% of the people get a CPOP. Of the 1,000 companies and individuals, only 10% knew what to do with their CPOP. 90% without any incremental support will forget it somewhere
Yeah.
between 2 hours and 2 weeks. So what you need to do is have a framework around that. Executive coaching is, in this case, Mitchell Levy is a framework, or with the social complement, I've got a framework around the CPOP. I have 4 coaches who pay when they get a new client, they send them to the clarity session so they can get a CPOP, and then they put their frameworks around it.
Cool.
So with coaching, probably the most important thing is their synergy. Is it fit? Does it feel good?
Yeah.
Second, do they believe that someone like me can support them?
Yeah.
But it's all about, I can't think of a better way. It's all about the conversation. I will say one other thing. If a board or when a board recommends that I talk to a CEO, The only thing I'm testing is whether or not they're coachable.
Got it.
So I will refuse a client that's not coachable.
Yeah, I like that. I like what you said about the incremental support, and formulas are great, frameworks are great, but having that's something we had to implement early on is that one-on-one account manager support, somebody that's really going to be there with everybody. And it sounds like you do that too in your company of making sure that they're getting that support to when they have the formula, they know how to implement it correctly and effectively. Because if knowledge was the thing holding us back. I love this phrase. Everybody would be a millionaire and everybody would have six-pack abs. A lot of it comes down to the actual accountability and implementation of whatever that thing is. Now, at this stage with these two companies, what do you feel is the biggest challenge you're facing right now?
If I'm, I think they're both about the same challenge, although they're different. So in the coaching space, because coaching has no barriers to entry, everyone and their brother is now a coach,
Yeah.
right? So it's choosing one person versus another. It's seeing what's real versus what's not.
Yep.
On the LinkedIn side, one of the biggest issues, and it's a different audience. I think 5,000 CEOs is a different audience. I've sat on the board of a public firm, so that gives me more credibility to talk to this type because that's where they'd want to bring their companies typically. So on the LinkedIn side, I'm talking to the business leader who has already spent a lot of money on formulas that haven't worked. And so, how does what I say and talk about sound different?
Mm.
And
That makes sense.
that's probably the biggest challenge is they've been burnt. Somebody I talked to last week, she's already spent $50,000 with on other people who made promises.
Yeah.
I know you're shaking your head. It's the same thing. It killed me because social compliment, I do a $500 setup and then it's 100 a week. She spent $50,000, been successful her entire life. Life has changed. And she goes, "Yeah, Mitchell, I can't afford $100 a week."
Wow.
I
Wow.
know. And I'm like, what do you say other than you'll get there, right? But
Yep.
you, I want to stop the people who are being offered the 25 or 50,000 and say that you should at least evaluate what you're going to get and
Yeah.
are there guarantees that you'll get results. When I do stuff with social compliment, you could start and stop anytime, right? If you're not seeing the value, if I'm not typically, I'm going to promise that I will save you between 2 to 5, 2 to 7 hours a week.
Yeah.
Okay, for $100 a week, what is that worth it? Now, if you don't have a good process in place to close business, then you might need the support of a
Yep.
closers.io. Then you might need the support. So that's where when I see how I fit into your infrastructure, there are things that when people come to me, they don't know who they are. Got it. Give a CPOP. They don't know how to sell, and I can't get them over that line. Those are
Yeah.
people who need you.
100%. I We're going over on time, but I really want to ask you this. What's your vision when you think over the next, let's say, 1 to 2 years and really your top priorities, where you want to take this? Paint me that picture. What does that look like? And I want to be respectful of your time. So if you have to go, please tell me you
No,
have.
no, I appreciate that. I'm at an interesting stage of my life where I probably a better way to say this. So I'm not going to give you the classic answer. I'm going to give you a different answer.
Please.
The I have hit all my bucket list items.
Okay.
So what that means is I now get to do the things I really love doing. And one of the techniques that Marshall Goldsmith recommends that we do for accountability, self-accountability, is to come up with a set of daily questions. So I have
Mm,
9 daily questions that I ask myself. And
okay.
they're broken into the categories of work, play is one, health
Yeah.
is another, and wealth is a third. Now,
Yeah.
one of my questions on wealth is that I tell the people that I love them today. So wealth is not just money, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
On the work play, the question that I ask myself every day, did I change the life of one human for the rest of their lives? So
Did I
when
change the life of one human for the rest of
for
their
the
life?
rest of their lives.
Wow.
Now, as an executive coach, there's an opportunity when you're working with a CEO who has 1,000 people or 10,000 people to change a lot of lives
Yeah.
through that. When I can gift somebody a C-pop for the 10% that keep it, I've changed their lives for the rest of their lives.
Mm.
So the thing that's interesting is I'm going to build the LinkedIn business till I get to 50 clients. And
Okay.
then I'm going to sit back and go, what do I want to do with this now?
Yeah.
Because at the moment, the way I've structured the systems, that will take up too much of Mitchell time.
Yep.
So then I either build the process and go and do more or sell or do something else. What I can tell you is for those people who become clients, I've changed their lives for the rest of their lives. And makes me smile. So to answer your
Awesome.
question, as long as I have fun and can keep answering those questions in a way that makes me smile, then I'll keep doing that.
I love that. Two questions to wrap up. One is, what is one tip you would give to new entrepreneurs starting in 2025? And
Mm,
maybe this can be more of like a mindset tip, less tactical. And then the second one is pretty simple. What's the best way for people to reach out to you?
thank you. Thank you for both. No matter how much money you have to start your business, you have an infinite amount of brain power and horsepower at your fingertips.
Hmm.
There are many VCs who don't want to admit this, but sometime this decade, we are going to see our first single person unicorn. We're going to see our first billion-dollar company where it's
Mm,
basically created by one person.
yeah, I've heard
Uh,
this. Yeah.
So you have as much access to anything. So use it. And the best way to use it is find what you're passionate about and then start talking to your prospects and see what they're going to buy.
Yeah.
And then start selling it and delivering. Yeah, I can't think of anything better than doing that. And you keep doing that over and over again. For instance, with me, with social compliments, a 5-month-old experiment. I've got 17 clients. I'll get to 50. That's when I will first figure out what do I really want to do with this thing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I love that.
Yeah. Oh,
And
thank
then
you.
what's the best way for people to reach you?
The best way is at my website. So it's mitchelllevy.com, mitchellllevy.com. From there, it'll point you to Social Complement if you're interested in that or executive coaching. And you could also get to my calendar and book time directly on my calendar. So mitchellllevy.com.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time today, Mitchell. I really appreciate it.
Amar, it was great. What a great set of questions and insight and adjusting you did to this conversation. So thank you.
Thank you. So that wraps up another insightful episode of Founders Future. To our listeners, if you're inspired by today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And if you're looking to scale your business and really enhance your sales and marketing efforts, visit closers.io to discover how we can support your growth journey. Until then, keep on climbing.